and tell you about what you'll be able to do when you leave here this evening. So thanks again to everyone for joining us, and of course thanks as always to Dr. David Ajibade and Building Strength Webinars for having me here. As I mentioned before we get started, tonight we're going to talk about some simple steps that you can take to overcome something that is quite naturally programmed into us, because we're genetically programmed to age. In fact, evolution, when we got into our 20s and we got to the age where we were able to raise kids to where they were self-sufficient on their own, we were pretty much done. And consequently, we are genetically programmed to start aging after we go through our 20s, as we get into our 30s, and nothing is more true of that than our brains. Now tonight, I'm going to be sharing with you just a few things about your brain, which I'm going to suggest to you as your most important organ. And I'm also going to talk about plasticity, how your thoughts literally create your brain. Then we'll talk a little bit about left brain and right brain and why that's really a myth, and some newly discovered neurons that connect both hemispheres. We're also going to talk about the complexity of the brain, why it's such a dynamic organ, and then we're going to talk about the basics of good health and how you can exercise your brain, and the importance of sleep, some things you can do to get a better night's sleep, and what you can do as your next steps. So all of that is ahead in just a moment. So, as I mentioned tonight, folks, we're going to talk about your brain and your next steps. Folks, I'm sorry, I lost my connection with you for just a moment. I am back, and we're going to get started here right away. I do beg your pardon, folks. We were starting to talk about your brain, and just a few interesting things about your brain. Your brain is just 2% of your weight, yet it receives 20% of the blood coming from your heart, and it also receives 20% of your body's oxygen and glucose. It also represents 50% of your genetic complexity. That's half of your genes that are devoted just to growing your brain. Now, of course, your brain controls or regulates every function of your body, and many believe it to be the seat of consciousness and the source of all activities, what you think, who you are. So many people would say, well, the brain is the most important organ in your body. Yet, there's a lot that we don't know about the brain, and a lot that can go wrong, either gradually or suddenly. But studies show that we have what's called plasticity, and what that means is that we can actually grow neural connections. Sometimes this happens when people are learning a new skill or a new sport. You can actually see those regions of the brain lighting up. Also, it's been learned that stroke victims can actually transfer skills from a damaged region of the brain to one that is undamaged. Not too long ago, it wasn't believed that that was possible for the brain to heal itself and to grow itself in those ways. But now it's been proven, excuse me, that people can grow new brain connections and create new neurons from stem cells, and all of this as a result of our thoughts. And that's one of the really amazing things about the brain. because now we have the capacity in brain imaging studies with actual real-time movies where we can see inside the brain, and we can see how our brains create our thoughts, and likewise how our thoughts literally create our brains. We can grow our own brains. Now, there's kind of a myth in what a lot of people believe about the brain, and that's the left brain, right brain myth. And here's what we mean by that. It's sometimes considered that the left hemisphere, the left side of the brain, is the side of the brain that is involved with rational and logical thought, whereas the right side of the brain is associated with creativity and emotion. But really, as we have been learning more and more about the brain, that's just simply not true. It's just too simplistic. Now, certainly, there's areas of specialization in the brain, but both hemispheres are involved. And here's one of the really fascinating and exciting things about the brain that we have just learned. And when I say we have just learned this, it's a study that was done in 1999, so about 13 years ago, by Professor John Allman at the California Institute of Technology, is when this was first discovered and it was first published. And what he discovered was what is called spindle neurons. Now, in your brain, there's about 10 billion neurons. Pretty amazing, huh? But of those 10 billion, only 80,000 of those, a tiny, tiny fraction of those, are these spindle neurons. And they are in very, very specific areas of the brain. One area called the anterior cingulate cortex, usually referred to as the ACC, and then the frontoinsular cortex, the FI. Now, these two regions of the brain have an important role in many cognitive abilities, and likewise disabilities that are generally unique to humans, ranging from savant perceptiveness and perfect pitch to dyslexia and autism. And in fact, these spindle neurons only occur in a highly significant group of animals, basically ourselves, humans, diverse whale species, and great apes, just real simply put. And these spindle neurons have a role almost as kind of an air traffic controller, because they're very much associated with the emotions and reach deep into these specific areas of the brain, and also they convey the motivation to act, and also the recognition of error. Many of the characteristics that are really unique and make us human are associated with these newly discovered spindle neurons. And again, it's one of the things that makes research in the brain and the studies about the brain so exciting, because it empowers us with this knowledge to know that we can make changes in our own brains. Now, I'm sure you've all heard the expression, "I think, therefore I am." It was said by Descartes many years ago in the Renaissance as proof that we actually exist. And here's what we use to think with, and that, of course, is our brain. And our brain, as I'd mentioned a moment ago, is composed of 100 billion neurons, and these neurons have 100 trillion connections between them. That's how complex our brains are. And as I mentioned a moment ago, past our 20s, our brains are subject to gradual or sudden decline. Evolution focused on traits, keeping us healthy long enough to raise children's self-sufficiency. And keeping our brains past our 20s wasn't a trait that was selected by natural selection. Now, we were talking about areas of the brain a moment ago, and there are regions of the brain that are associated with some of our basic functions, for example, the cerebellum for voluntary movement and the cerebral cortex for rational thought. And it's important to keep that in mind because what I'm going to suggest to you now is a variety of ways that you can exercise your mind because your mind, your brain, is just like any other muscle in your body. And studies now are proving that keeping your mind active in certain ways, that I'm going to outline for you here in a second, have a significant impact on how long you have a sharp brain. So to begin with, having a regular routine with a variety of physical activities. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say walking is one of your activities. But having an active lifestyle, just the way that you go about your day, and as you're doing different things, if you're going shopping or if you're cleaning the house, doing that in an active way so that you're moving your body in a variety of ways. Things that also involve hand-eye coordination are really great. Again, you're exercising all those different parts of your brain with your physical activities. Also doing what are called their crossovers, and by that, and each of you can try that right now as you're listening, just take your left hand and put it on your right shoulder, and your right hand and put it on your left shoulder, and you're crossing over. And if you take them off and put them back over there and take them off and put them back over there, you can do exercises in a variety of ways so that you're going from left to right, right to left, hand-eye coordination, all of the different things that keep those areas of your brain healthy and happy. Now, that's as far as physical activity is concerned. Let's also talk about emotional and logical activities, your mind. Here, we want to talk about activities that fall into a couple of different categories. For instance, activities that require problem solving. Now, that could be as simple as, doing things like crossword puzzles or other activities of that nature. And, of course, advanced problem-solving activities, whatever that might be for you. Now, in general, reading and writing. Now, notice that it also says and writing. It's really valuable to, if you're reading something, no matter what it is, just to make some notes to yourself about that. It's a way of making things real to yourself. We'll talk about that when we get into some other areas of health a little later on, too. Now, relationships. A real important area of your emotional life. The quality of your relationships with family, with friends, with coworkers, whatever relationships means for you. And also, of course, hobbies, things that you might enjoy. All this, and these are just examples, of course, of the types of activities for your mind that are going to continue to keep it in the best possible shape because truly, your brain is your most dynamic organ in the body. Now, let's talk about some specific ways for keeping your brain healthy. And let's begin with the basics of physical health. Well, diet, hydration, drinking lots of water, of course, exercise, weight, and stress. I mean, those are really the top 5 areas for most folks. And in a moment, I'm going to show you a real simple way that you can start to assess each of these areas for yourself in your own life. We can talk about each one just a little bit. That's what tonight's class isn't about all of that stuff. But, of course, having good basic physical health is truly essential, naturally, to keeping your brain healthy also. Remember what we talked about back at the beginning of the hour. How your brain is such a robber when it comes to, 20% of the blood coming from your heart and 20% of your body's oxygen and glucose. So just naturally, the quality of what's running around in your blood and what's coming in through your lungs and how all of that's mixing together in the miraculous thing that is your body has a huge impact on your brain, which in turn impacts everything else. Also, after we focus on some of those basic areas, we're also going to talk a little bit about sleep. You may not know that. Of course, given the numbers here, there's a lot of people in our audience tonight all over the world who may be suffering from this, and I don't mean to be making light of that. I'm sorry, but recent statistics have shown us that 1 person in 3 is chronically sleep deprived, and that may be you. You may have trouble sleeping. You may be waking up a number of times during the middle of the night or having a hard time going to sleep. We're going to talk about that also because really, folks, all of these things, of course, work together. Our bodies are just so incredible, and the way that all of this works together. But truly, we are finding more and more that it's all about the basics of good health that we're looking at right there: diet, hydration, exercise, weight, and stress. But before we talk about those, let's talk just a little bit more about sleep, because it's not something that's talked about very often in this context, and really it's just as important as diet and exercise. And here's some of the reasons why. For one, it improves glucose. Of course, that's the sugar in your blood, the uptake to the brain. And also, sleep provides a dramatic increase in leptin. Now, leptin is a hormone that decreases appetite. It's a natural appetite regulator. And that's one of the reasons why very often folks who are having a hard time sleeping tend to be a little heavy, a little overweight as well. Not the only reason, for sure, but again, one of the wonders of the body and how all of this works together. And of course, we've all heard of REM, rapid eye movement, one of the phases of sleep. It's actually 1/4 of your sleeping time, and it's the most important phase of your sleep because during that time, the brain actually recognizes itself and processes information. In fact, some regions of the brain are actually more active when you're asleep than when you're awake. And one of the reasons for that is that memory consolidation is creating those new connections in your brain. Now, we'll come back in a moment to some more suggestions for getting a good night's sleep, but since we're talking about it right now, if you are one of those folks who is suffering from not being able to get a good night's sleep, and I'm sure this is stuff that you've heard before, but bear with me for just a moment. We'll get on to some real good stuff in just a moment. But certainly some very simple steps that everybody can start to take. During the day, no caffeine in the afternoon or evening. Also, before going to bed, having the time and preparation for sleep. And what that means, what I suggest to my clients and what I practice is taking 30 minutes before actually laying down and turning off the TV or turning off the radio or whatever it is that's going on, getting rid of all the electronic stuff, taking some deep breaths, sitting down, doing a little journaling, just writing down a few things that happened during the day, and just relaxing my mind. And I assure you folks, for many, many people, it makes a world of difference to, and it goes without saying, since we're talking about turning off the TV, for sure, not having the TV in the bedroom. But of course, these are all personal choices, and if that's working for you, that's wonderful. These are just some of the very, very fundamental suggestions that we have for people who are struggling a little bit with sleep. But now I had promised you that you were going to have a simple tool here to be able to start to evaluate yourself in these basic areas that we were talking about. So what I'd like for each of you to do, please, with that pen and paper that I asked you to grab at the start of our class, if you would there in the middle of your page, draw a big circle, like the size of a grapefruit, right there in the middle of the page. And then we're going to divide it into 8 sections like a pie. So inside the circle, if you just draw a line up and down and then from side to side. And that divides it into 4 sections. And then if you just draw X that'll divide it into 8 sections like slices of a pie. And what we have here, for those of you who are looking at the screen, is the wheel of health and wellness. Now there, over on the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see a little example there of a wheel and what it looks like when it's filled in. Now, in this particular example, this person, as you can see, had a variety of ratings. Now, here's how you're going to rate your wheel, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, okay, with 0 being the center of the circle and 10 being the outside of the wheel. And you can see that I've started to fill in the wheel. And we're going to go ahead and fill in every category. This is just an example for you to get started so you can see how it's going to work and what it's going to look like in the end. So for each one of these sections now, I'm going to ask you to rate yourself on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being totally dissatisfied and a 10 being totally satisfied with each one of these categories that we're going to put in here. Now, again, please note the language that I used there, folks, because I'm not asking you to use another criteria for your ratings, and here's why. Okay, let's talk about weight, because weight's the first one, and that's an issue for a lot of folks. Let's say that you're, quote-unquote, 10 pounds overweight, okay, that you've got a little extra weight on your body versus what typical weight is for someone of your size and shape, or what have you, okay? You're a little bit overweight, but you're entirely happy with that. Your doctor doesn't have a problem with it. It's not causing you any problems. You've got a few extra pounds. It's not a big deal. There's no reason why you couldn't be entirely satisfied with that situation. Now, certainly, if you're, 20, 30, 40 pounds overweight, that's not the case, I hope. Likewise, with each one of these categories, that's what I would like for you to think about as you're creating your own wheel of health here, is your level of satisfaction with each one of these categories that we're going to go around and label right now, okay? So we've got your wheel, and we're going to start with the section in the top right. So that very first piece of the pie there in the top right, let's call that weight. Then the next one down, please write in diet. And then the one underneath that, we're going to call exercise. And there in the fourth section, hydration. Okay, in other words, water. So on the right-hand side of the wheel, we've got weight, diet, exercise, and hydration as the labels for those 4 sections. And coming up around the bottom of the wheel, the next one there, please write in stress. And then the one above that, sleep, what we were talking about a moment ago. Now you'll notice here in the examples I left the last 2 sections blank. And the reason is that I want for each of you to start using this tool yourselves and to create your own wheel of health and write in the other categories later on, not during tonight's class, but as you start to use this, whatever is important to you. Remember, this is your wheel and what's important to you. Now, I've put down here what I believe to be the basics of good health and wellness. So we're talking about being healthy and happy here. So now let's go around for each one of the sections that we've labeled and give it a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. And you can see what I rated on my example here and where I drew my wheel within the wheel, and y'all are going to do the same thing here right now. So for that first section, weight. What's your current level of satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10 with your current weight? Write in the number next to weight and then draw an arc there that's parallel to the outside circle wherever your number is. So if you gave yourself a 5, you'd put your mark in halfway up through the section, just like you see there in the example. Or if you're not looking at the example, if you gave yourself a 5, you're going to draw a line halfway up in that piece of pie. You're going to draw a circle within a circle. So you've given yourself a rating for weight. Good job. Now let's go to diet. What do we mean by diet? By diet, we mean the food that you eat, the food that you buy, how you prepare that food, and just for purposes of discussion, and again, that's what tonight's class is not about. We could do classes, lots of classes on each one of these topics, but just generally speaking, let's say a quote-unquote good diet. Again, we've all heard this, but there's lots of good reasons why. That we want to have fruits and vegetables, non-processed foods in your diet, foods that are relatively low on carbohydrates, especially breads and pastas. Processed carbohydrates wreak havoc on your system, and we are going to talk a little bit about that. But those are just some of the general guidelines, and we all know pretty much what healthy eating is, and especially healthy eating for each of you and what's good for you. So give yourself a number, 0 to 10, your current level of satisfaction with your diet. Then the third category, exercise. Now, we're not necessarily talking about going to the gym. If you're doing stuff like that, that's great. That's wonderful. Keep it up. On the other hand, just a nice combination of walking several times a week, generally speaking, having an active lifestyle, so that as you're going through your day, heck, even if you're, cleaning the house or going to the grocery store or just doing things like that, that you're moving at a good speed, that you're feeling energetic, that you're breathing deep. It's real easy to have an active lifestyle and keep your body moving. So, again, generally speaking, on a scale of 0 to 10, give yourself a rating on exercise, please. So we're drawing a wheel within a wheel. So far we have weight, diet, and exercise. Now, the fourth section is hydration, and by that I mean water. And by water, I mean water, and here's why, okay? Other beverages, certainly now, if you're drinking soda pop, I'm going to encourage you to cut down on that if that's something that you're willing to do. But the important thing is that when we're talking about hydration, we're talking about water, and we're not talking about any other beverages, because any other beverages, even coffee, for example, and of course soft drinks or fruit juice, no matter what it is, your body thinks that it's food because of the other stuff that's in it, and it processes it like food. That's one of the big reasons why people who drink a lot of soda pops, especially soda pops that have sugar in them, have so many issues associated with that. And we all know, one of those things that we've all heard, your body's 70% water. Well, it's true. So just naturally, we want to keep lots of water flowing through you every day. And by lots of water, and I'm sure many of you have heard this recommendation too, half your body weight in ounces. So the real simple math is if you weigh 200 pounds, that's 100 ounces, and 100 ounces is 10 10-ounce glasses of water a day. Now, some folks go, because it sounds like a lot. If you're just getting started drinking water, you might go, oh my God, I'm going to drown. Well, believe me, once you start taking the gradual steps, and we're going to talk about gradual steps. These aren't big steps we're going to be taking. These are baby steps we're going to be taking. Once you start doing that, and there's real simple ways of doing it, you just start drinking more, and pretty soon your body is craving it. And one of the things I always suggest to folks is to drink water first thing when they get up in the morning, before they get in the shower or make their coffee or whatever they do first thing when they get up, to make the very first thing drinking a glass of water. And pretty soon people are really looking forward to that. Pretty soon they start drinking 2 glasses of water, and then just drinking water throughout the day. And then pretty soon people are carrying thermoses or water bottles around with them. And if you're one of those folks, you know what I'm talking about, because your body just naturally starts craving that. And again, it's just an easy and simple way. You're just naturally drinking water throughout the day, and your body will thank you in so many ways. So anyway, that's my pitch on water. Thanks for bearing with me. It's just like #1 stuff. and so simple to do. So now, having said all that, please give yourself a rating, 0 to 10. Again, 0 being the center of the wheel, where all the spokes meet, 10 being the outside, your current level of satisfaction with the amount of water that you're drinking. And that brings us to the 5th section that I called stress. Now, stress means a lot of different things to people, but what we're talking about is how you think and what your mental life is when you are thinking about quote-unquote problems, if you are quote-unquote worried, your level of happiness, how you deal with change, how you deal with the circumstances of your life. There's a lot of issues there, but here's why all of this is so important. Because one of the things that I really hope you go away with this evening is really seeing how and why our minds are so amazing and the amazing impact that they have on our bodies. Now, we were talking about sugar a couple of times. Let me give you just an example, if I may, about something that is very related to everything that we've been talking about. And it has to do with one of the most serious epidemics that we are currently dealing with in this country, and actually in many countries around the world now, and that's diabetes. Because you see, folks, our bodies really still function like they did tens of thousands of years ago. In other words, refined carbohydrates did not exist, but for many people are now staples. That stuff we were talking about, like soft drinks. I'll get off the soft drink kit. Bread, pastas, sweets. These refined, and here's why. Because it's been my experience that adults always learn best when you explain why something, and you go, oh, that's why I shouldn't be drinking all that soda pop. But here's the thing, okay? And folks, and for you who have kids, here's some education that you can share with them too. Because refined carbohydrates, okay, the items that I just mentioned, all the stuff with sugar in it, bread, pasta, all these refined carbohydrates are digested and absorbed rapidly, and they raise blood sugar very quickly. Consequently, it releases more glucose into your bloodstream. Now, a rise in glucose, okay, simple sugar, causes your pancreas to excrete insulin. Now, we've all heard of insulin, but insulin, quite simply, is a hormone that is designed to move glucose into your cells for energy. Now, think about insulin. It's often associated with the fight or flight response, what's called the fight or flight response. When you get scared suddenly, you get that rush. And insulin is part of that. Of course, you feel that adrenaline too, but insulin is taking sugar to your muscles for quick movement. And it's amazing how all this stuff works. But unfortunately, when you eat sugary foods, insulin levels spike as a result of all these natural processes, and that results in a sharp drop in blood sugar. It's your body fighting itself. And this, in turn, triggers craving for more sugars, leading to another spike in insulin and so on. You see how that cycle keeps going? More sugar, more insulin, more sugar, more insulin. But here's the really important part of all of this. Your cells lose sensitivity to insulin. And an ever-increasing amount is needed in order to move that glucose into the cells that we were talking about. And this is known as insulin resistance. And it's also one of the primary causes of what's called metabolic syndrome, which is a serious condition associated with high blood pressure and coronary artery disease. So all of this, resulting in this insulin resistance, leads very often to what we all have heard, once again, type 2 diabetes. And what is that? Quite simply, it's a breakdown in the body's ability to process carbohydrates, that whole cycle that I was just telling you about. In fact, the pancreas, which is where the insulin comes from, becomes so overworked it eventually fails and can't produce enough insulin to lower blood sugar. And the bottom line on all this, folks, and why I'm so passionate about it, cases of type 2 diabetes have increased tenfold in the past 35 years. And the number of people now with diabetes is estimated somewhere between 25 to 30. We're talking about adults, and when we start talking about kids, whoa, we don't even want to go there because that just gets even more alarming and more important for folks to learn about this. So, anyway, enough said about all of that. That brings us to section 6 on our wheel. We just did stress. Okay, and we were talking about the impact of all of that, so hopefully you've given yourself a rating on stress, 0 to 10. And finally, sleep, and that brings us back to sleep that we were talking about before. How are you sleeping? What time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up? How well do you sleep? Remember what we'd said about sleep is just as important as diet and exercise. So now we've pretty much filled in your wheel. We've got 6 sections filled in here. We haven't completed your wheel within the wheel yet because there's still 2 blank sections, and I bet many of you have cheated and already written in stuff, haven't you? And if you have, that's great. And if you haven't, think about that after tonight's class. Seriously, what else can you put on here that you would like to start to bring into balance and focus for yourself? Because this really is a very powerful tool for you to be able to use. It's a tool that's been around in one form or another really for thousands of years, but it's so powerful because it's a visual representation of all of your goals here, but you can see it in one place on one piece of paper, and as you make progress in these areas and you see the wheel within the wheel coming into balance, you'll feel your life coming into balance. And just the synergy of all of this, you'll naturally be able to accomplish more and lead a healthier and happier life. It's really wonderful how this can work. Now, it's not magic because there's a process that goes along with this, okay? And here's what I'd like to suggest to you as your next steps. For those of you who can see the screen, there's also these suggestions there as well. There's a little process, and I'm going to suggest to you for each one of these areas. And it's going to start by selecting the area that's most important to you, that one area on your wheel, diet, hydration, exercise, weight, stress, sleep. Which one right now is most important? They're all important, but for you right now, which one would you like to improve? Okay, good. You selected one. Now, here's the process that we're going to do, okay? Just ask yourself, what is one thing I can do to increase that number by 1? Okay, we're going to take baby steps here. And what I mean by that is to, especially at first, give yourself steps that can't hardly fail, impossible to fail. Let's go back to, let's say water for a minute. And let's say you decide that every morning when you wake up, before you get in the shower, you're going to drink a glass of water, and you put a Post-it up in the kitchen or on the bathroom mirror to remind you, because little reminders like that are real helpful. At first, it says, did you drink your water? So you get up, and of course, naturally, when you're making changes, it takes usually 10 to 14 days for a new routine to kind of become second nature. So you got to think about it. You got to use that mind a little bit at first, and go, well, I'll put a note up so I'll see it, and you get up in the morning, you don't think about it, you start to get in the shower, you see that note, now you got to have a little discipline here and accountability with yourself and say, oh, that's right, I promised myself I'm going to do this. So you stop, you go in the kitchen, you drink it. And I assure you over the course of time, again, typically 10 to 14 days, your body is just naturally going to start craving this. It's going to want it. It's going to feel so good. And you just naturally start thinking that way. It becomes just a natural part of your routine. And it just moves on from there. So ask yourself now, for that area that you selected, that one area on your wheel that's most important to you right now, what is one small thing I can do to increase that number by 1? Just 1. Okay, we're just going to move it up 1. Even if you're at a 3, we're going to move it up to a 4. Then we'll move it up to a 5, etc. Just do this one step at a time. Because that's the way that we're going to make lasting change. So now you've decided what you're going to do. When are you going to do it? Now let's, to answer this question, let's stop and think about this for a moment, okay? And I'd like to share with you what are called the stages of change, which again is a whole other class. But there's 6 stages of change that were discovered, were proven, and there's a process that goes from pre-contemplation to contemplation to preparation to action. Now notice right there, action is stage 4, and that's one of the reasons why people fail so often, because they might be, say, attending a class like this, and somebody's talking about how, you can do better, you can improve, just do it, okay, as one of the companies says, and you're all excited, you're revved up for the moment, and you go, yeah, I'm gonna get on the treadmill every day for 30 minutes, and of course, you don't. It's probably not a realistic goal at all, and more importantly, where you're really ready to make that kind of commitment. Now, when you mark that area there on your wheel as being the most important area, did you say to yourself, well, yeah, I've been thinking about this, and I really do need to do something about it. So you're ready to think about taking action. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, boy, I was talking to so-and-so the other day about this, and I've tried this before, and it didn't work out real good, and I really know I need to do this. If you're really ready to get started, then make that commitment to yourself. Because what I'm going to suggest to you, what I'm going to ask you to do, is you've decided what you're going to do. You've decided when you're going to start doing that. Let's say you got, tonight is when you're going to start, or next week, or whatever you decide. Write it down. Make a contract with yourself. And it'd be wonderful if you have a little notebook or something that you can keep for yourself as a journal, because I'm going to suggest to you that you want to record your results every day. Now, again, this is a real important part of harnessing that process of change, because we're going to be talking now to your subconscious, and this kind of goes back to one of the suggestions that I had for you about getting ready for bed and making that special time before you go to bed, turning off the TV and drinking a glass of water, let's say, and doing some deep breathing, just relaxing and just thinking about your day, and think about the things that you're grateful for. Think about the things in your life that are good, that your family, your friends, your coworkers, the place that you live, your health. Now, whatever that may be, there's always something good to say about your health. There's probably many good things to say about your health, and we know that there's probably some areas that can get better too, but for right now, there's a lot to be grateful for, and most importantly, you're making a commitment to yourself either to be in action starting now or get into action at a defined date, and then we're going to have a simple process to follow. What's one small thing I can do? Let's go back to that example with the water, for instance. You're drinking 1 glass in the morning when you get up. Now let's take it to 2. Then let's add 1 in the middle of the morning. Then let's add one at lunch. Then let's add one in the afternoon. Let's implement a couple of suggestions. Let's carry a thermos bottle or a water bottle around in the car, so just as you're driving around, as you think of it, you can drink some water as you're at a red light or whatever the case may be. You'll find that you just naturally start enjoying it more and more, and your body enjoys it more and more. And it will thank you so much, because very often, most folks, in addition to being sleep deprived, are also dehydrated. In fact, I'll share something with you. If you're feeling thirsty, you're already dehydrated. Now, I'm not talking about if you're, out jogging a marathon. I mean, of course, you're going to be thirsty if you're engaged in heavy physical activity. But just throughout your day, if you notice being thirsty and you're saying, "Oh, gee, I need a drink of your water," that's your body going into panic mode, really hitting you over the head to get some attention, saying, "Well, I really, really need some water." That's why it's so important to start out drinking water in the morning and continuing to drink throughout the day, even when you don't feel like it. It can often help reduce or eliminate headaches, muscle tension. It naturally gives you more energy. And remember, this is just the start here, this one example that I was talking about. Because let's go back for a moment and think about another action step that we might do in another area, for instance. Now, of course, diet, we know, is a real important area, and sometimes I hate to use the D word, because often people associate that with trying to lose weight, struggling to lose weight, can't lose weight, depriving themselves of food in order to try to lose weight, and that's no way to go about doing it. As some of you may know who have been trying different diets and nothing seems to be working for you, it can be very frustrating. It can be very concerning at times. It can affect your emotional well-being, your self-esteem, thinking, God, I've tried this, I've tried that, nothing seems to work, I don't know what to do. It can be very, very frustrating for folks. Well, the good news is that when we start to bring all of these areas in balance that we're talking about, and you have an active lifestyle, and you're getting a good night's sleep, and you're drinking lots of water, and you're eating good whole foods, that can make a huge difference, obviously. That's what we're putting in our bodies. That's what we're feeding our bodies. That's what we're feeding our brains. Now, here's something that happens very often. We were talking about insulin and insulin resistance. The other thing I wanted to mention to you that is related very much to all these areas is something that's called inflammation, and it's very significant in chronic conditions such as deterioration of the brain and other common conditions as well, such as arthritis, and believed to be associated with many other things. But here's the other thing that's happening as a result of these lifestyle issues that we're talking about. Activity, weight, sleep, they all contribute to this condition. Now, actually, inflammation per se, if it's acute on your body, it's what happens when you scrape your knee. Okay, it's hot, it's red, it's swollen, it's painful, right? But if you think about it, it's critical to the survival of our ancestors in a world without antibiotics or antiseptics. So our bodies, once again, it's the way our bodies are built. And as a result of the ongoing inflammation that's occurring in the body because of these lifestyle issues, it can become chronic, and none of these symptoms can appear for many years, and then they can suddenly erupt, and even catastrophically. And that's why inflammation is believed. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to give you medical advice. Obviously, I'm a certified coach. But it's widely believed now that inflammation has a significant role in almost all chronic diseases and could be one of our leading causes of death. And I'm talking about things like heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and what we were talking about before, diabetes. Diabetes can be considered a disease of inflammation. Now, the good news is that with these lifestyle issues, in some quote-unquote good places, and I hate to use the word good sometimes, folks, but you know, Shakespeare once said, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And that is so true about so many of these things, but also going back to my notion here, the idea that I'm presenting to you for your consideration, that we're in these bodies that have been around for a long time, and what has happened in the last 100 years with the industrialization not only of our lives, but the industrialization of agriculture and the consequences in our food supply and what typical diets are, especially in America and countries like that with the so-called Western diet, it's having a huge, huge role on people's health and happiness. And that's really what we're here to talk about tonight as well. Now, our topic, of course, is you create your brain. And we talked about your brain as your most important organ and how your thoughts literally can create your brain. And that's so true, folks. I mean, the imaging technology now is increasing so dramatically by leaps and bounds that neurologists, scientists are literally able now to peer into the brain and actually see it lighting up, so to speak, as it's active. We're learning some amazing things like those newly discovered neurons. They're sometimes called spindle cells or spindle neurons. That very unique shape. Only a few of them in our brains, in human brains, and then whales, and also some of the apes associated with higher emotions. Just some incredible stuff that we have been discovering here in just the last 10 years. You know, and a reminder that our brains are incredibly complex. I shared all those numbers with you, but the top number to remember is that we're pretty much designed to start running down around 30, and it just doesn't have to be that way, because even though we're genetically programmed to age, there's you know, and that's often associated with deterioration when we talk about aging. But growing older is under your control, and I'm sure you know people really who it seems like they have grown younger. Maybe they make some of these changes in their lives like we're talking about tonight, changing their diet, maybe going more to a vegan diet, or getting serious about a walking program and going for 30-minute walks 3 times a week, or whatever the case may be. I mean, it can have just dramatic impact on the way you look and the way you feel. And you're going to get feedback from people on it for sure. And it's going to have some dramatic effects on your body, and the most dynamic organ in your body, your brain, your mind. And we talked about the basics of good physical health: diet, exercise, sleep being a big one. Now, I had mentioned when we were talking about sleeping, I'd given you a few ideas about sleeping, with that special 30 minutes before going to bed probably being the best suggestion I can give you. If you are finding that you are waking up in the middle of the night, there's a couple of simple suggestions that I can give you also. One of them is, you know, stay in bed, and I know that's difficult sometimes, but stay in bed, start doing some deep breathing, and by that I mean kind of a simple form of meditation, a deep breathing exercise where, if possible, you're going to breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth, big, long breaths, and as you do that, in your mind, count down from 100 to 1. So breathe in and just think 100. breathe out. Breathe in, 99. Okay, and that's all you're going to think. Now, of course, other thoughts are going to come and go, but just simply acknowledge them. You're going to feel, maybe restless, tired, going, oh man, another night I'm awake in the middle of the night. Those thoughts are natural, but let's just put those aside for a moment and just do some deep breathing, some simple meditation, and that countdown from 100 to 1, and go backwards, by the way. Don't go from 1 to 100. Your subconscious thinks you're counting down something, but if you work backwards, it's going to focus your mind, because you have to think about it, right? It's not natural. Your subconscious isn't going to kick in. It's unnatural for you to count backwards, and it's going to make you think about it, but really what it's going to do is focus your mind on that, focus your mind on your breathing, and you'll find, if you'll practice that a little bit, that can be real helpful in getting back to sleep. But really the key, of course, is going back to your wheel of life. And where is the balance in your life? Have you got 3s and 4s and 8s and 9s, or more of them in the 6s and 7s? Because you'll find that balance, especially eating some good foods, again, whatever that means to you. I'm not here to preach to you about a vegan diet or a raw diet. I mean, all of the diets have their pluses and minuses. I am here to ask you to seriously consider what you're doing with your refined carbohydrates for all the reasons that I shared with you about inflammation and diabetes, because it's some huge factors right now in all of the lifestyle issues that we're seeing all around us, the obesity, the diabetes, and many of the chronic conditions associated with aging and associated with the deterioration of the brain. Of course, top among those, I suppose, would be Alzheimer's. And there's certainly no magic cures or guarantees associated with something like that. But remember what we talked about, please, not only in terms of keeping your brain healthy and the basics of good physical health, but also exercising your mind and the variety of things that you can be doing. Reading and writing activities, relationships, and that can even be calling people on the phone or just being engaged with folks on that level. In other words, logical and emotional activities, a variety of physical activities. Leading a full life is just most naturally going to lead not only to a healthy and happy brain, but a healthy and happy you as well. And I see that we're just about out of time here. For those of you who are interested, I do have a special offer tonight on my coaching. My website is called Stepway to Health, and my slogan is Gentle Steps to Health and Happiness, and I hope you can see tonight what some of those might be. Call me toll-free if you like, please, or you can email me. They're at info@Stepway to Health. If you're looking for more information or resources, I'd be happy to provide those to you. Also, if you like, I have a special offer for the folks tonight on our webinar here. Thanks again, by the way, so much, Dr. David, for allowing me to be here again at Building Strength webinar. And thank you all for being here tonight. I hope you've heard something that maybe has caused you to think a little bit, or maybe remind you about something. And for sure, I hope that you'll take your wheel and put it on your refrigerator, or do something with it, please. It's a visual tool, and with a very simple process that goes with it that can have amazing results for you. So thank you so much for being here. Drop me an email or give me a call if you have any questions, or I can be of assistance to you in any way. And do very much appreciate you being here, and have a very wonderful rest of the day and a very healthy and happy brain and a very healthy and happy life. Bye-bye, guys.